Vanarottamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Nastapreshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Reading from the Srimad Bhāgavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 20, Conversation between Maitreya and Vidura, text number 18. Sasarja Chayaya Vidyam Pancha Parvanam Agrata Tamishram Anda Tamishram Tamo Moho Maha Tamaha Sasarja Chayaya Vidyam Pancha Parvanam Pancha Parvanam Agrata Tamishram Anda Tamishram Tamo Moho Mahatama Sasarja Chayaya Vidyam Pancha Parvanam Agrata Tamishram Anda Tamishram Tamo Moha Mahatama Sarga Chayaya Vidyam Pancha Parvanam Agrata Tamishram Anda Tamishram Tamo Moho Mahatama. I want everybody to sit here. Sarga Sasarja, created. Chayaya, with his shadow. Avidyam, ignorance. Panchaparvanam, 5 varieties. Agrataha, first of all. Tamishram, Tamishra. Andatamishram, Andatamishra. Tama, Tamas. Moha, Moha. Mahatama, Mahatamas, or Mahamoha. Translation. First of all, Brahma created from his shadow the coverings of ignorance of the conditioned souls. They are 5 in number and are called Tamishra, Andatamishra, Tamas, Moha, and Maha Moha. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. The conditioned souls or living entities who come to the material world to enjoy sense gratification are covered in the beginning by 5 different conditions. The first condition is a covering of tamishra, or anger. Constitutionally, each and every living entity has minute independence. It is misuse of that minute independence for the conditioned soul to think that he can enjoy like the Supreme Lord, or to think Why shall I not be a free enjoyer like the Supreme Lord? This forgetfulness of his constitutional position is due to anger or envy. The living entity, being eternally a part and parcel servitor of the Supreme Lord, can never, by constitution, be an equal enjoyer with the Lord. When he forgets this, however, and tries to be one with him, his condition is called tamishra. Even in the field of spiritual realization, this tamishra mentality of the living entity is hard to overcome. In trying to get out of the entanglement of material life, there are many who want to be one with the Supreme. Even in their transcendental activities, this lower grade mentality of tamishra continues. Anda tamishra involves considering death to be the ultimate end. The atheists generally think that the body is the self and that everything is therefore ended with the end of the body. Thus, they want to enjoy material life as far as possible during the existence of the body. Their theory is, quote, as long as you live, you should live prosperously. Never mind whether you commit all kinds of so-called sins. You must eat sumptuously, beg, borrow, and steal. And if you think that by stealing and borrowing, you are being entangled in sinful activities for which you will have to pay, then just forget that misconception, because after death, everything is finished. No one is responsible for anything he does during his life. Unquote. This atheistic conception of life is killing human civilization, for it is without knowledge of the continuation of eternal life. This anda tamishra ignorance is due to tamas. The condition of not knowing anything about the spirit soul is called tamas. This material world is also generally called tamas because 99% of its living entities are ignorant of their identity as soul. Almost everyone is thinking that he is this body. He has no information of the spirit soul. Guided by this misconception, one always thinks, quote, this is my body, and anything in relationship with this body is mine, unquote. For such misguided living entities, sex life is the background of material existence. Actually, the conditioned souls in ignorance in this material world are simply guided by sex life, and as soon as they get the opportunity for sex life, they become attached to so-called home, motherland, children, wealth, and opulence. As these attachments increase, moha, or the illusion of the bodily concept of life, also increases. Thus, the idea that, quote, I am this body and everything belonging to this body is mine, unquote, also increases, and as the whole world is put into moha, sectarian societies, families, and nationalities are created, and they fight with one another. Maha moha means to be mad after material enjoyment. Especially in this age of Kali, everyone is overwhelmed by the madness to accumulate paraphernalia for material enjoyment. These definitions are very nicely given in Vishnu Purana, wherein it is said, Tomo viviko moha syad, anta karana vibrama, maha mohas tu vigneyo, gramya boga sukhaishana. Maranam yanda tamishram, tamishram kroda uchate, avidya pancha pravesha pradurbhuta mahatmanaha. Om Agyana Timirandasya Janandrina Shalakaya Chakshur Unmlitam Dena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Sva Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagara Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitam Scha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagat Pate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Dibyad Brindiranya Kalpadrumadar Srimad Ratnagara Singhasanasto Srimad Radha Shulagovinda Devo Prastalabi Savyamano Smarami Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Brindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyas Cha Kripasindubhi Vacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktaminda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Then maybe we should make it higher. Tasarga Chaya Vidyam Pancha Parvanam Agrikta Tamishram Anda Tamishram Tamo Moho Mahatama. First of all, Brahma created from his shadow the coverings of ignorance of the conditioned souls. They are 5 in number and are called Tamishra, Andatamishra, Tamas, Moha, and Maha Moha. So, conversation between Maitreya and Vidura. After praising with great knowledge, enthusiasm, and realization the process of hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very instructive and exemplary to note that Vidura, wanting to know how is this material world created? What is the background? What is the reason? Since you know of matters inconceivable to us, tell us, O holy sage, what did Brahma do to create living beings after evolving the Prajapatis, the progenitors of living beings? Series of questions. How did the progenitors, Prajapatis, such as Marichi and Svayambhuva Manu, create according to the instructions of Brahma? And how did they evolve this manifested universe? Did they evolve the creation in conjunction with their respective wives? Did they remain independent in their action, or did they all jointly produce it? Maitreya begins by explaining the position of Mahavishnu, the greatest manifestation of Vishnu, in charge of the entire material cosmic manifestation, breathing out and also from the pores of his body, unlimited universes in which an individual Garbhodakshay Vishnu is situated. So, after the manifestation of the universe by Mahavishnu, and the first living being, we hear extensively in the second canto how Brahma found himself alone in this universe, the only living entity, and was perplexed about his duty. He heard the word is used, occult, but actually we should say, for general people to understand, spiritual sound, tapa, perform austerity, and by his austerity for a long, long period of time, thousands of celestial years, he was given darshan and instruction by the personality of Godhead himself. And his mature realization and ecstasy of that darshan is beautifully recorded in the Brahma Samhita. So we're hearing how Krishna, he entered into the heart of Brahma, and by that entering of the heart, he brought his intelligence to bear, and with the intelligence invoked, he began to create the universe as before. So here we are in verse 18. First of all right, so we're creating a material world, so you have to create the conditions under which the living entities, who really don't have to be here anyway, all right. So you want forgetfulness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is described in the purport, is against your constitutional position. So we have to create the illusion, the false notion that you are the enjoyer. The conditioned souls or living entities who come to the material world to enjoy sense gratification are covered in the beginning by 5 different conditions. This is why Krishna consciousness is so nice, that even from the beginning, or from immediately applying the process of Krishna consciousness, illusion is dissipated. Godhead is light, nescience is darkness. Wherever there is Godhead, there is no nescience. Krishna is such a genius that even we are beginners, or we're at whatever stage that we're at, the devotee, one of the hallmarks or beautiful vanguard of the devotee, true devotee's consciousness, is that he thinks, I'm not in any way advanced, I'm not a devotee at all. And remaining very, very humble and sticking very tightly with absolute faith to the instruction given to him by the spiritual master, the authorized representative of Krishna. The devotee passes his life performing all varieties of devotional service in the best and most voluminous way that he possibly can. Later in this canto, when we will be hearing the teachings of Lord Kapila to Mother Devahuti, Prabhupada writes in the purport in the 25th chapter, The Glories of Devotional Service, the first chapter of that instruction, that the devotee, from his sake, for his previous sinful activities performed in defiance or ignorance of his relationship with the personality of Godhead, is fit to be brought to the lowest regions of hell. But the Lord, without the devotee's knowledge, makes all arrangements to bring him home back to Godhead just after leaving the present material body. So, the untrained logician or empiricist hearing this would consider this kind of paradoxical or a slippery slope to be that would be difficult to navigate, but actually this is the beauty of the relationship between the pure devotee and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The conditioned souls or living entities who come to the material world to enjoy sense gratification are covered in the beginning by 5 different conditions. The first condition is a covering of tamishra, or anger. Constitutionally, each and every living entity has minute independence. It is misuse of that minute independence for the conditioned soul to think that he can enjoy like the Supreme Lord, or to think, why shall I not be a free enjoyer like the Supreme Lord? This forgetfulness of his constitutional position is due to anger or envy. So anger and envy, they are appropriately understood differently, yet they are connected. Our constitutional position is to be the obedient and cooperative and loving servant of the Supreme Lord. So when somehow or another we find fault, or we've developed this position to dislike that relationship, rebel against it, then automatically or concomitantly there will be anger. We just saw in the battle between Lord Boar and Hiranyaksha how angry the demon Hiranyaksha was at the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We see him being angry with others. He's trying to challenge Varuna, who admits that he's now too old for combat, to a fight. And Hiranyaksha doesn't get that angry at Varaha, but meeting his formidable foe, who was predicted by Varuna, will be the one to satisfy his desire for battle and ultimately destroy him. Your body will be fit to be eaten by dogs and jackals and vultures, and you will lay down dead for eternal rest. So anger starts at the top. If one is angry or one is envious, what does Prabhupada say in the Bhagavad Gita? When one sees someone has something for his sense gratification and he doesn't have it, he becomes very angry and envious. So we need to be careful when we view devotees who we might perceive to be in a more materially, quote-unquote, opulent position than ourselves, that material things are simply the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Is that devotee using that increased opulence and facility for proportionate furthering of the preaching movement of the Lord? Such devotee has shown himself to be competent to be given such facilities because he's using it purely to expand the preaching, the service of the Lord. So instead of becoming angry and envious of a devotee with that facility and empowerment, we should be very glad and we should be very happy for that devotee's empowerment. And if at all possible, we can take instruction, lesson, or even take shelter of such a devotee to help us to advance in devotional service. And of course, the opposite of that, or along with that, is a devotee in a position of comparative increased opulence or facility towards other devotees should be extremely cautious of not misusing that facility for sense gratification. Prabhupada says in one place, as soon as he misuses 1 farthing of the collection, he at once becomes a fallen victim. The living entity, being eternally a part and parcel servitor of the Supreme Lord, can never by constitution be an equal enjoyer with the Lord. When he forgets this, however, and tries to be one with him, his condition is called tamishra. Even in the field of spiritual realization, this tamishra mentality of the living entity is hard to overcome. So Prabhupada is now relating to us that this is not just, oh, that's for the fallen conditioned souls out there, but we're in the Krishna consciousness movement. This never could possibly affect us or happen to us individually or collectively. So Prabhupada is pointing out, even in the field of spiritualization, this tamishra mentality of the living entity is hard to overcome. Also, Lord Kapila later in this canto describes that there's devotional service performed in the modes of material nature. We're talking about tamishra, the lowest modes of ignorance, and Prabhupada relates that one affected by the mode of ignorance, while attempting to perform devotional service, he thinks that he is the best devotee, and he has a very angry and envious mentality. Such devotional service is in the lowest grade. There's the instructive story by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, Balam rice and cow ghee, or top-most quality basmati rice and cow ghee. And the story goes that there was a big zamindar, a big land owner, and he had multivarious services that needed to be done for the huge estate that he possessed, and he was having trouble retaining servants because they would always not be able to perform the proper task. They'd be lazy, they'd be indolent, they'd be sneaky, conniving, stealing, pilfering. So he, this zamindar, he by chance met a contemporary friend, also a big landowner, and revealed his mind to him and said, this is the problem and this is the difficulty. And so his zamindar friend, he had a very good solution. And he was very, very cheerful because he has adopted this technique, which he's about to reveal to his friend who's having trouble. And he is so confident in this technique that he assures him that all your problems will be over. So the solution is that you feed all of the servants the highest quality basmati rice and cow ghee for at least 6 months. And don't pressure them to do anything. Just let them do whatever they want, when they want, have a good time. And then after 6 months, you can start incrementally putting pressure to bring them up to the standard that you require. And you will see, even some might complain and go away, they will come back. And so that's exactly what the case was. When being pressed for more rigorous work, some of the, so we could also relate this more rigorous work to more. Krishna wants us to become more deep in our purification, wants us to root out more anarthas, material desires, not clinging to quote-unquote crutches. Oh, I need this, or I need to have this conception for myself to be able to go on. And the landlord said, all right, go wherever you want, but they would come back very quickly because nowhere else could they get that highest quality basmati rice and cow ghee. And they would even say when coming back, why are you coming back? Well, I've developed a kind of love and sentiment for you, my dear landlord, Zamindar. So after a good amount of time, the two Zamindars met each other, and the one who gave the advice asked, so how's it going? And so the first Zamindar, who was very unhappy and morose and had the problem and took this advice, he shouted with great happiness, with a huge smile on his face, all glories to basmati rice and cow ghee. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta brings it on home and gives the purport that basmati rice and hardly anyone wants to remain steadfast in the environment of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as an eternal servitors, only motivated for name, fame, profit, adoration, and distinction do we remain for some time. And when we feel frustrated in achieving that, because the Society of Devotees is not for achieving name, fame, profit, adoration, and distinction. It's for going very, very deep into the transcendental loving service mood to the Lord and to the Vaishnavas, and that especially to their, which means to their mission. Prabhupada gives a definition of the pure devotee, that he performs his devotional service without any desire for elevation to a higher status of life. So, these are Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's words. So to retain all such truant purposes, truant persons, it's like when kids play hooky from school, they hire a truancy officer. He has to go round them up, and at least back in like Little Rascals, 1930s movies, they had a big butterfly net and catch the kids. Well, you're going back to school. So to retain all such persons who want to play truancy from the devotional service to the Supreme Lord, the benevolent spiritual master arranges to feed such errant persons balam rice and cow ghee in the form of giving them positions, titles. We see that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, all the disciples had all of these like very, very fancy titles and names. Like here, my name is such and such Das, but such and such Alankar, and this and that, and on, and like 5 or 6 different names. And for each time they would make an achievement, another name would be added on. So when such persons find it too difficult, in other words, the purification becomes too much, or the pointing out of your false ego becomes too painful, and contemplate, well, I should just go back and be with the non-devotees. They have a much more egalitarian and equal kind of love and peace thing, and there's not all of this pressure. But you know what? There's no balam rice and cow ghee out there. So they come back. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he puts the arrangement of balam rice and cow ghee by the spiritual master to the neophyte, materialistically motivated disciples in the category of his supreme, infinite, causeless mercy, to somehow or another retain everyone in Krishna consciousness. Somehow or another become Krishna conscious. Rules and regulations will follow later. Supreme, greatest examples of such personalities, Raghunath Das Goswami. His regulative principles were like lines on a stone. And he came from a very opulent, rich family. He was the only son of his mother and father, and also his father's brother or his uncle was also childless. So he was the heir apparent to a great empire and a great fortune. But he wanted no part in it. He simply wanted to serve the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya and Svarup Damodar. The living entity can never, by constitution, be an equal enjoyer with the Lord. When he forgets this, however, and tries to be one with him, his condition is called tamishra. Even in the field of spiritual realization, this tamishra mentality of the living entity is hard to overcome. We see this idea when we try to preach to people, or in book distribution, when the person becomes a little more inquisitive and it necessitates or demands us that we answer their questions. Not like, what is the tilak on your forehead? What is that mark? It's all in the book. Why do you people shave your head? It's all in the book. You'll take the book home and read it? And it's not like that. They want more. Then their Mayavad conception comes out. So this is not just something, from the hippie days, 40 or 50 years ago, but it's an ever-present mentality in the conditioned soul overcome by these types of ignorance. There are many who want to become one with the Supreme. Even in their transcendental activities, this lower grade mentality of tamishra constitutes. How can you possibly develop transcendental loving service to the Lord if you think that you are God? It is impossible. So such persons can never, ever experience the ecstasy of devotional service. Under tamishra involves considering death to be the ultimate end. Shivaram Swami put out this video and it showed how we're preparing for everything in life. We're taking our education, we're making our investments that will yield this money, and we're getting our house, we're getting our cars, we're arranging for our children's education. We even arrange for our cemetery plot where we're going to be buried. But who's making arrangement for where we go in the next life? The atheists generally think that the body is the self and that everything is therefore ended with the end of the body. Thus, they want to enjoy material life as far as possible during the existence of the body. So then Prabhupada, kind of in his own words, or free expression, not exactly, Charvak Muni, beg, borrow, or steal and get ghee. And if you think that by your sinful activities of stealing you'll be punished, just forget that, because at death everything is finished. No one is responsible for anything he does during his life. This atheistic conception of life is killing human civilization. So how is it that periodically in this material world, person or group of persons under the name of, or in the category of a different new type of government or regime or a different type of business venture, they create a situation that harms countless numbers of people? How could they have the consciousness to proceed in this, and not just even proceed, but to think that they're doing a very good thing by doing this, doing these things? It's because they are completely steeped in this idea that this life is everything and there is nothing after death, and the only thing that matters is whatever has to be done to enjoy in this life according to their conception. And then they have maybe a shadowy, kind of vague idea that we're passing the thing on to our children or to our quote-unquote disciples who are also going to carry forth the insanity after we're dead, and through them we will enjoy whatever they're thinking. This atheistic conception of life is killing human civilization, for it is without knowledge of the continuation of eternal life. This undhamishra ignorance is due to tamas. The condition of not knowing anything about the spirit soul is called tamas. This material world is also generally called tamas because 99% of its living entities are ignorant of their identity as soul. So we see the Harinam Sankirtan with book table adjacent. It is a very nice filter that here it's a very obvious manifestation, a direct manifestation in Kali Yuga especially, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of His holy name. And it's interesting, Prabhupada gives a 99%, so where's the 1%? Maybe it's like that. We should take there was a sign that said, there's big retail opportunity, largest subway station in the system. 65,874 people a day pass by here. So out of that number of people, how many people will show some form of attraction or come up to the book table and say, I'm spiritual, I love spiritual books. And they'll say whatever they're going to say, my third eye chakra, blah, 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 this and that. But they have a sense that they're not just this material body and that there's something after death. Prabhupada described that in the university, everyone is going for business education, whereas the philosophy department is practically empty. But because philosophy is so important, it's the foundational bedrock for human civilization, the department must remain open at all costs. So Prabhupada has described that even a very small percentage of the population becomes Krishna conscious. That's enough to save human society from its suicidal course. Or what is the benefit of millions of stars? One moon in the sky is enough to dissipate the darkness of this material world. And that's certainly the case with His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. One person, but his empowerment as Shaktivesh avatar, has saved this entire planet and universe. Almost everyone is thinking that he is the body. He has no information of the spirit soul. Guided by this misconception, one always thinks always in this ignorance, without let up, without even one peak of light, one's entire life. What a horrible position. One always thinks, quote, "This is my body, and anything in relation with the body is mine." For such misguided living entities, what is the background of material existence? Sex life. Sex life is the ultimate offense to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is an original feature. Here we're worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead in its highest feature, Sri Sri Radha Govinda, the internal pleasure potency of the Lord, the feminine counterpart whole of Krishna is present. Their relationship is the primary relationship, which is worshipable and praiseworthy for every single one of their separated, expanded part and parcel jivas. Does it say this in the purport here? The more that one is attracted or affected by sex desire, the more one is implicated in demoniac life, and concomitantly or proportionately opposite. For such misguided living entities, sex life is the background of material existence. Actually, the conditioned souls in ignorance in this material world are simply guided by sex life. So it's not just the immediate attraction, but it expands. And as soon as they get the opportunity for sex life, they become attached to so-called home, motherland, children, wealth, and opulence. So my family, my neighborhood, my nation, my people, and in another part of the world or another place, they're thinking the same thing. We have to fight for a facility. There ain't enough name, fame, profit, adoration, and distinction to go around, so we have to fight for it. We have to arrange all different complicated diplomacy strategies, hot wars, cold wars. All these attachments increase moha, or the illusion of the bodily concept of life. Thus the idea, I am this body and everything belongs to this body is mine, also increases, and the whole world is put into moha. Sectarian societies, families, and nationalities are created, and they fight with one another. Maha moha means to be mad after material enjoyment, especially in this age of Kali. Everyone is overwhelmed by the madness to accumulate paraphernalia for material enjoyment. These definitions are very nicely given in the Vishnu Purana, and the Sanskrit is quoted as follows. Sasarga chaya vidyam pancha parvanam agvata tamishram anda tamishram tamo moho mahatama. First of all, Brahma created from his shadow the coverings of ignorance of the conditioned souls. They are 5 in number and are called tamishra, anda tamishra, tamas, moha, and maha moha. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna. Prabhu, you mentioned that we should be very careful when we see devotee in a higher position, not to develop envy. And also these devotees in higher positions, they should be careful not to misbehave. So my question is, what is the proper way? How do we react when we see that somebody in higher position, he misbehaves? So what should we think? And what should be done?
Ultimately, higher position means, or is, being granted by Krishna more facility for devotional service to him. So it doesn't necessarily just mean material facility. In the fourth canto, there's maybe, I think it's Maharaj Prithu's instructions to his citizens. And Prabhupada relates that failure to observe these things is the cause for all our problems. That when we see someone more qualified than ourselves, we shouldn't become angry or envious, but we should serve them. Or, we see someone and he's in another part of the world, he's doing so great. Well, let me abandon my service here and go and serve him over there. Doesn't mean that. But it means to appreciate. Prabhupada describes the gopis that, she is doing so nice in serving Krishna. Let me praise her and aspire to also come to the same standard. It doesn't mean that we abandon our service or we become sorry, I don't have so much facility. Kolavechar Sridhar, he is Sridham, a coward boy of Krishna. In Chaitanya Leela, he can barely eke out a living selling banana leaves, which he would spend 50% on Mother Ganges. You see his place commemorated by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta behind the Jagannath temple, right? And you read in the fifth canto, Prabhupada quotes from Chaitanya Bhagavat, just see the opulence of Kolavechar Sridhar. The greatest demigods, Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, shed tears upon seeing his greatness. What is that greatness? This is Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva. How much opulence, how much facility do they have? The same Lord Brahma, he is offering such heartfelt prayers motivated by begging for forgiveness to 6, then becoming 7-year-old Krishna, because 1 year passed, stealing the cowherd boys and calves, his intimate friends. And the Acharyas described that after the end of these prayers in the 14th chapter, Krishna does not seem to give any indication whether he's pleased or displeased. He's thinking, who is this Lord Brahma saying all of these big words? Where are my cowherd boyfriends and my calves? He's standing there with some yogurt in his hand. In describing the ecstasy of Lord Chaitanya in the mood of Srimati Radharani, dancing and ultimately fainting before the carts of Lord Jagannath, the gopis, they're not as rich and as opulent and as seemingly as famous as the queens of Dwarka, but their position is by far superior. Prabhupada writes in one purport there that they're not interested in sophisticated ways. They're not interested in the arts and this, that, the other thing. They're simply absorbed in serving Krishna in the remote pastoral village of Vrindavan. That is their only. So we should understand what is, when we say increased facility, it doesn't mean numbers of disciples, amount of money, amount of properties. Of course, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur he's also said that one can judge a Vaishnava, his empowerment, by how many Vaishnavas he has created in his life. And we all know that if our knowledge is based on the reality and ultimately sanity, that anything we can do is because of the blessings of His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, who is empowering everyone in this Krishna consciousness movement, and will continue to do so for many, many generations to come. And when we meet our contemporaries, instead of becoming, let me boast and brag and kind of parade myself around, show that I'm better than you, we should make friendship. And when we see someone who's less advanced, and the advancement, Pradyumna, he joined in 1968 or 1967. He's there in Montreal, and there's Janardhan, who was a French-Canadian, but he was in the first initiation in 26 Second Avenue. So he was slightly older devotee, older godbrother. So Pradyumna was always very keen to hear Srila Prabhupada. So they're sitting in Prabhupada's room, and there's a scholar or one or two guests there. It's like maybe just 3, 4, 5 people, and Pradyumna inched like maybe a foot closer to Prabhupada so he could hear him. And Prabhupada said, he is your da. He is your dada. You should not make offense. He is your older godbrother. Like Kunja Bihari, the lead disciple of Srila Bhaktisanta, they would call him Kujada. It's like the older brother. So there's etiquettes, but it's not that one who is just older or has been around longer is the most advanced, which would be expected, but maybe not. So there's many different considerations. So what was the third category? We see someone in a less advanced position, we become oppressive. Here, shine my shoes, do this, do that. If you didn't bow down, offender, and like just kind of freaking the younger devotee out by okay, I was treated like this when I was your age, so now I'm going to get back. I'm going to get what I'm going to get my piece of the pie. No, you should lovingly share with the devotee, give them all facility and all love that they can, as rapidly as possible, advance as quickly as possible. So, I don't know if I specifically hit the spot exactly as you wanted to, but those are a few thoughts. All right, so it's after 9 o'clock, and we can end here. Dr. Ryan is eager, and you probably have more. What are those things, calendars? 2023 calendars? Okay. You got to make sure that people know what year it is, and very quickly, because the year has already started, right? Yes, Ryan?
It can be quick.
Huh?
It can be quick.
Jack be nimble, Jack be quick.
Okay.
Jumped over the candlestick.
Very quick. Since this is about covering of ignorance, we're talking about covering of ignorance.
Yeah.
So could you say something more about anarthas? What are anarthas? How do they come about? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. There's an entire book. There are books on the subject. There's Madhurya Kadambini by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur.
What? How do we combat them? How do we recognize them?
Well, say your duty is to clean the kitchen. Will you see things that are not clean and should be cleaned? And there's a certain point where you did everything, or there's a standard, and you go in there and say, good, clean. Same thing with our consciousness. But Prabhupada did say, if I revealed everything to you at once, you would faint. What was that? There was a situation with Giriraj Swami with Prabhupada in Bombay, now Mumbai, and Giriraj Swami said, or was like apologizing, Prabhupada, I'm sorry that I was in Maya. Was in Maya? You're always in Maya. What is that story?
So they're walking on the beach, and he was saying, telling Srila Prabhupada, he said, Srila Prabhupada, I feel like I'm Krishna conscious, but sometimes I'm falling in Maya. And Prabhupada stopped. Falling in Maya? He said, no, you're always in Maya. Sometimes you're Krishna conscious.
Anyway, it's a revelation more and more how the levels of purification or the levels of attainment of pure devotional service. Ultimately, Prabhupada said we should come to the stage where we can talk with Krishna, eat with Krishna, dance with Krishna, face to face, eye to eye, cheek to cheek. So, if we're attracted to any idea to be happy in this material world outside of our relationship with Krishna, we can realize that we have anarthas that are still hampering or plaguing us. That's why there's given the varnashram, the stages of life. If one cannot immediately come to the stage of pure devotional service and renunciation, there are various ashrams and stages that one is recommended to go through to ultimately become completely free of anarthas. It's described that the grihasta who passes through that ashram properly, that at the end he's completely free of all material desires and he can walk this world fearlessly, or without having any fear of being again attacked by material desires. It's described in, actually, who is greater than Maharaja Yudhishthira, the chief brother of the Pandavas? Narada Muni comes and to his palace, and Maharaja Yudhishthira is very, very eager to receive instruction from the great Narada Muni. Similarly, Nanda Maharaj, what is that verse? Some are worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead in this way and that, but I will worship Nanda Maharaj, in whose courtyard is crawling the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's begging from Garga Muni, please give me a in the case of Yudhishthira, Griha Muda Di. I'm simply ignorant of the goal of life, and you please instruct me. So ultimately, Lord Chaitanya is saying, Kiva Vipra, what is it? Whether one, doesn't matter what varna or what ashram one is in, if one knows the science of Krishna, he is the spiritual master. And so on that we have to be careful. There's been a great mistake in this movement, thinking that the color of one's cloth, the color of one ashram is in, makes one better than others. That type of controversy reached its pinnacle in 1975 during Srila Prabhupada's time. The Radha Damodar party became, maybe a little bit too big for its britches, not so much in the service, certainly not in the service that they were doing, but during those years, 1 million BTGs were being ordered a month. And being distributed all over the world. But you see the mentality, and how many of those brahmacharis remain brahmacharis? So we have to have a cool head. We have to be not We have to be very broad-minded, broad intelligence, broad-hearted. Many different things. All right, so we're way over time. Thank you very much. If there's any calendars that still have to be packed, they'll have to be done after we end the class, or. But I'm sure you guys all thought of that, so there's no problem. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hari Om.
They arise suddenly. They take away functions temporarily. It's about to midnight.